So, Margaret, if you wouldn't mind please making your video, closing your video, and also Elizabeth, if you wouldn't mind please, that's perfect, thank you. So you can all see us, we can just see each other. So firstly, I want to thank you all. Hang on.
You're not on Facebook. You need to take it back.
Okay.
You need to be on Facebook.
Okay. I need to do something before we do this. Reclaim host.
Live to Facebook. The 3 dots.
Live on Facebook.
Let's say stay as host and I'll manage everything else.
Yeah. Next. So you have to hold on a minute, I'm afraid, just while we're doing this. We are live streaming this onto Facebook. Choose how you want to start. Go live.
That's it.
Go live.
It's lovely to see all the names. I can see so many familiar names there, and I spotted a lot of familiar faces. You're all very welcome.
So there we go. So if I could ask you all please to stop your videos and stay on the mute, that would be great. So Fanny, if you wouldn't mind, that's lovely, thank you. So we want to thank you all for joining us here this evening. It's been quite a journey getting this book to publishing and getting it out into the world. For me, it's been many, many years. Gosh, I'd say 20 and a half years ago, my mother was very ill, and I brought her home to live with us, and she died here with us. And afterwards, it was my 50th birthday party, which I enjoyed so much, by the way. I decided to be 50 for 2 years in a row. And if I could ask you all please just to turn your videos off and your sound off, that'd be great, thank you. And so at the party, at my 50th party, of course we had a great time. It went on through the night and we sang and danced, and I realized at that point that I didn't want these teachings that had been gifted to me, shared with me, I didn't want to see them going back again into the unconscious, going back down into the place of the ancestors. I wanted them to come out. I wanted them to be shared. I wanted them to be remembered by the women. And so from that point, I started focusing on teaching this work, on teaching what my granny had shared with me, what the stone people had shared with me, the Tuatha Dé Danann, the ancient ones, the ancestors. And it was really, and it has been a real blessing through my years, and it's been a real honour to actually bear witness to the growth that women have incurred, and men too, through this work, how it has opened them to the essence of who they are by literally taking on all that they are, recognising what they carry, owning their truth, talking their truth, walking their truth. It brings people to a different place, to a different space within them. And we all carry the essence of the ancestors within us. Hi Patricia, if you wouldn't mind turning your video off, that's great, good woman. Our ancestors live within us. They are not gone, they are not forgotten. They are in our bones, they are in our blood, they are in our joints. And their memories lie within us also. all that they've accomplished, all that they've worked through, all the grief, the pain, the joy, the laughter, it all lies within us. And we carry that. We grow from that. They really are the roots. If you look at a tree, they are the roots of the tree. We are the trunk, and we grow on through and from our ancestors. We carry their patterns within us. And until we recognize that, until we embrace that, we are also held within those roots, tied within those roots. And the more we work through, the more we recognize what we are carrying in honor of our ancestors, for it is an honor to carry it, no matter how difficult it is. The more we work through that and embrace all that we are, the more we can let go of what no longer serves us, what no longer feeds us in life. And as we recognize that, as we let go of that, either through working through our own systems, working through the patterns we're carrying, or whether it is through honoring the ancestors in one way or another, then indeed we can grow on. And we begin to not be defined by the stories of our people, but to be held by them, to be nourished by them, to be fed by them, and to be able to fall back into the strength of everything they went through. Because we carry that within us. Patricia, would you mind turning your video off, please? Thank you. And so that's how it began. And in the work, that's where we first go to, working in the underworld, working in our roots. When we stand on the earth, our feet connect down through the earth. Our ancestors lie, their bones lie within the earth. The plants, the grass, all grow from the earth. The animals eat the plants, we eat the vegetables. The birds pick and carry it through. The bees take the honey, all that carries the essence of our ancestors. So they are not gone, they are with us, they walk beside us. They are part of our living breath. And in embracing that, we move into the middle realm, where we become conscious that indeed we can create our reality. And there is a responsibility in that. And responsibility is the ability to respond, to be truly, fully in the here and now. Hi, David, if you wouldn't mind turning your video off, please. Thank you. And so the book started that way, and it continued to grow. And for many, many years, I talked about it. And for many years, I kept saying to people, I will. Every time people asked, I will. And then gradually I began to realize that I was never going to put pen to paper. I'm a dyslexic. I'm never going to sit down and write reams and reams. So with the permission of participants, I began to record some of my workshops and trainings. And then I put out the energy. I asked the presence to draw to me who was going to work with me, who was going to take on the huge job, really, of moving the work from being recorded to being written down. And along came Orla. And so I introduce Orla to you. Hi, Julie. Would you mind please just turning your video off? Thank you. So then, yes, I asked Orla, and I'm going to pass it over now, because Orla has done an amazing job, not just inscribing, but actually bringing the whole energy of the teachings into life through the book. So over to you, Orla.
Thanks, Amantha. Well, as Amantha said, she approached me at the Wise Woman weekend in 2015, and she asked me if I would write a book for her. And my first reaction was to say no, because I was in the middle of writing a novel at the time. And then that afternoon, I went to a workshop given by Amantha, and there were 30 women in that workshop, and she kept us all absolutely enthralled for an hour and a half. And at the end of it, I said to myself, If Amantha goes to her grave without this being written down, I will never forgive myself, and the world will be poorer without it. And so my work began. I finally said yes, and my work began. And so the task was to write a book. And the very first step in that was to go down to Kerry. And that was incidentally on Bridget's Day 2016 that I went down to see Amantha in Kerry. And she gave me more than 200 recordings from her workshops and from her trainings. And I asked her what her vision was for the book, and what she gave me was the image of a woman, a tree, and a chalice. And so I had to go through the recordings and type everything that was relevant for the book. And it was a bit tedious in the early times, but at the same time, it was fascinating because the work itself was just so very, very interesting. And Amantha is an absolutely marvelous storyteller. And I realized from the very start that it was a very big task and that it would take several years at least. The visual image that Amantha gave me of the woman, the tree, and the chalice, those three parts of the image correspond to the three main parts of the book. So the first section is about the Sebhean. Now, Amantha, many of you know, but those of you who haven't met Amantha before might not know that Amantha is a Sebhean, an Irish shamanic, an Irish shaman, a healer woman and visionary. And this was something that was passed on to her by
Somebody's, sorry,
grandmother.
Paula. My phone is off, but for some reason it's ringing. So I'm just going to turn it off completely. I beg your pardon. Please go on.
No worries, yeah. Amantha is a shaman, a healer woman and visionary in a long tradition, part of a long tradition of healer women. And this knowledge was passed on from mother to daughter or from grandmother to granddaughter, possibly since the time of the Tuatha Dé Danann. It goes back for years and years in the Irish tradition. And so the first section is about the Shavan, who is the woman who walks between worlds, the traditional healer woman, who through her shamanic journeying brings back what is needed for healing and for wisdom. And the second section then is the tree. Now, the tree is the ancient understanding of the three worlds, the upper world, the middle world, and the lower world. The upper world corresponds to the branches of the tree, and it's the world of spirit. The middle world corresponds to the trunk of the tree, and that is the world we're in now, the everyday, here and now. And then there's the lower world, which Amantha just spoke about a few minutes ago, and that's the roots of the tree, our ancestors. Now, the third section of the book is the chalice, and the chalice is about the way in which the shavan, through her practices and through rituals, can take people and things and bring them into the sacred in different ways, but especially through ritual and ceremony. When the book was ready, we went looking for a publisher. And first we went to Gill in Dublin. And while they liked the book, they felt that they really didn't have a category or a readership to fit it. And serendipitously, Deirdre Nolan from Gill went to a book fair where she met Lucy from Womancraft, and she mentioned the book to Lucy, and Lucy was interested. So we sent the book to Lucy, and that was how it happened. Um, just a year ago, Valentine's Day last year, we signed a contract with Lucy. So when we got together with Lucy, she had a vision of the book that was a little different from ours. She wanted to cut back. She wanted to emphasize the Irish aspects rather than the energy healing aspects. And she asked a lot of interesting questions about where the work came from. Now, she was possibly looking for answers that would tie it down to facts, but the answers that Amantha came up with to those questions, rather than tying it in fact, brought us into a whole interesting understanding of Amantha's practices and shamanic work and shamanic journeying. So that was quite fascinating. And then Lucy's vision really improved the manuscript and brought it to where it is today. Then we went through the editing process with Lucy's husband, Patrick. You can see Patrick there. And we also did editing with Connie, with Amantha's friend in America. Connie, she helped with the editing as well. And then Patrick did the layout, and Lucy did the blurb, and I wrote the foreword. And that's what we ended up with. Now, this book took 4.5 years out of my life, and it feels very important to me that I did it, because the contents of the book actually belong to a long Irish oral tradition. And possibly without me, this would never have been written down. It would have remained in the oral tradition rather than becoming a book. And by becoming a book, it gets to reach a much bigger audience than it would have in its oral form. It was really a wonderful journey for me, taking that oral material and turning it into a book. And one of the things that I love about Amantha's work is the joy and the optimism that is at its core, the deep respect for the earth, and also the belief that we as human beings can harness within us the power to heal our planet. And that to me is real joy. I think that's one of the really wonderful teachings that Amantha has. My challenge was to reflect Amantha's wonderful storytelling style and to present the content in her voice without any embellishment from me. To make it work for the people who were very familiar with her work, the people who had studied with her. And the feedback from them so far has been that reading it is like having Amantha in the room with them. So I'm really delighted with that. But the other part of that challenge was to make this very complicated work accessible to people who had no training or background or knowledge of shamanism or the way of the shaman. In writing this book, it was a deep soul journey. I learned things about myself that I never knew, and I accessed the shaman in myself that I never knew was there. I also learned tricks and strategies that have been a great help in my life and in my relationship. So I'd like to thank Amantha for the journey, for setting me on it, in spite of my original reluctance. And I'm going to just read you a little piece from the book, a piece from the Rituals and Rites of Passage section. Rituals and rites of passage have traditionally been used as an expression of transitional periods in people's lives. Many of us have ached to honor those times And by recognizing and expressing them, we heal ourselves and weave ourselves whole again. Women's rites of passage bring sacredness into our lives, allowing us full expression of ourselves in a sacred manner. Rites of passage are important for recognizing times in our lives that have meant something to us. Once we recognize and honor those pivotal points, they become a part of our nature rather than something protruding and not aligned with the rest of ourselves. There is a difference between ritual and ceremony. Both are sacred and are done differently. Ritual can be done on one's own or with two or three people to observe, bear witness, or participate in it. A ceremony usually involves a community celebration. Ritual helps to bring things into balance. It helps us to absorb, honor, and recognize all that we are. We can release through ritual and completely own what we need to own. It is the symbolism and intention behind a ritual that gives it power. Women have always come together in ritual and celebration. We can imagine women gathering again in circles of sacredness, healing and holding. Our DNA retains the memories of those circles, and we can evoke them to find the natural way for the individual and the tribe to celebrate and honor the changing seasons within our lives. Our soul yearns to acknowledge the changing phases in our lives. When we honor those transitional times and experiences in our lives, we come home to the soul, recognizing our spiral journey as one of unfolding and beauty. Celebrating these passages allows us to grow and to recognize and integrate. Sorry, I'm going to have to take my glasses off for this, those experiences, so that they do not become an unheard note within the family weave, to be experienced again and again through generations until acknowledged and honored. In modern Ireland, we grew up with mostly Catholic rituals and rites of passage, but these retained elements of the older pagan traditions. The early Christian church under Pope Gregory had a policy of tolerating local customs rather than trying to eradicate them. As a result, many of those customs survived side by side with or integrated into the Christian ceremonies. For example, in the Irish tradition of death and burial, we have the church funeral, but we also retain the Irish wake. Until quite recently, there was the custom of the three Marys, three women called Mary, who would cry and tear their hair out, leading the mourners by their keening. That ritual goes way back to pre-Christian times. The keeners were always elder women. Traditionally, it was women who helped women to give birth. Women helped people to pass over. In Ireland, we have always been familiar with the role of women as holders of that space. All over the country, there are symbols of the cailleach, the hag, the crone, the síle na gigs, síle na gích, síle of the breasts, ancient carved images of women displaying enlarged vulvas, often found at the entrance to churches, are symbols of the divine feminine. They remind us that we are born of the womb and return to the tomb. These symbols are all around our land, and we breathe them in without even knowing it. Newgrange and Loughcrew were places of ritual, and we can only surmise what rituals they held there. However, we know that before the coming of the patriarchal church, the society was matrifocal, and it is possible that before that it was matriarchal. Women's rituals lie in the recesses of our memories, despite attempts over centuries to eradicate them. My granny had some rituals that were particular to her and some that were common at that time. Rituals around cleaning the house, lighting the fire, and saying grace before meals. Those kind of rituals are rarer now. In recent years, there has been a movement away from church ceremonies, with people celebrating their life passages in ways that feel more authentic to them. Going into ritual or ceremony is taking something special and making it sacred. Making things sacred is something that comes naturally to most women. Our bodies know how to do this. Through moving into the sacred place of ritual, we give ourselves up to the experience. I might plan the ritual and say, I'm going to do this here, and I want you to say this and bring that in there. But the most important part of the ritual is that when we step into it, we let go of all the pieces of it and allow it to move through us. Although we might plan to say certain words, something more might come through, and we need to allow that to happen. We need to let the ritual take us over. When that happens, it becomes much deeper, as if the pulse of the earth moves through us, deep and ancient. This ritual has been done 100,000 times by other women before us. When we give ourselves into that ritual, we draw from the experience of all those women, and it changes things for women. I have seen it again and again. Thank you.
Thank you, Orla. Thank you, and thank you from the bottom of my heart for all that you have done to bring the book into the reality that it is today by weaving the words in such a way. Many blessings. Thank you. And I'd like to introduce now Lucy from Womancraft Publishing. And Lucy actually brought Womancraft Publishing itself into being. It is part of her birth in this life, as well as the books that she's also brought forward. So I'd like to pass it over to you now, Lucy.
Thank you, Amantha. It's really, really lovely to be with you both here this evening, and just what a strange way to have to launch a book, you know, all of us here in our different little sitting rooms, and you know, but what a magical journey it has been. Orla kind of began the story of the strange coincidence of meeting Deirdre from Gill, and how that puts our meeting into action. And just what was really interesting about this journey has been that I didn't realize to what degree Amantha brings magic with her. So I with a lot of authors, and you know, they approach me with their books and they tell me about their work, and especially with first or sometimes second time authors, I have to kind of, you know, rein in expectations a little bit and say, you know, we're a small publisher and and you know, my main concern that I shared with Amantha and all of them we met was, you know, our main marketplace is the US by the UK, and this is an Irish based book, so I'm really concerned, will we be able to sell it, you know, will we be able to sell it to our larger audience? The answer is yes. The answer is that there is a hunger that I truly didn't realize was out there for a native way of connecting with our lands, with ceremony, with ritual, because so many women have connected with these things through perhaps culturally appropriated practices, and there's an awareness now of cultural appropriation, and so women have seen how ritual and ceremony and connecting with nature has a wonderful impact in their lives, but they want something that is rooted in their own place of becoming, their place of birth. And so this book has answered that call and that hunger with, just because I'm very lucky to see the messages, you know, we get through when people order a book. You know, that's one of the lovely things about a smaller publisher, is that we have more contact with our customers. You know, we have interactions with them on social media, and just the gratitude is out there for this book, the gratitude that is out there for Amantha, and to circle back to me not realizing the magic that Amantha brings with her. So I was aware that Amantha had done a lot of teaching and therefore had connected to a lot of people. But what I kept hearing again and again from people was, oh, I met Amantha 20 years ago and she just touched me. And I've just had this again and again. There was a woman who I saw the order come in, and she lives just the other end of the village to me. And I was like, how's she heard about this? Because like we are more of an international publisher than a local publisher. And I was amazed that she'd heard of this book and that we were selling it. And I said, well, look, we'll give you your money back for the postage. Just come and collect it from us. So she came and she talked to me about how wonderful Amantha was, and how Amantha had come down a couple of years ago and had been telling stories at their grandmother's group. And she was alight with having met Amantha and the effect of Amantha's work. And I've just had this again and again and again with the people we've interacted with, with pre-orders. Amantha's book has been the fastest selling book we have ever had. And we keep having to order more and more and more copies. It's just been breathtaking because people are ordering not just single copies, but 2 copies, 3 copies, 5 copies, 10 copies, 20 copies in a go. Like, this is just incredible, the love and faith that people have in Amantha's work and in what she's putting out there in the world, and the gratitude that people have to Orla for making it possible that Amantha's work can be in book form. So I want to really just articulate that and share that, because the final piece of the puzzle was Amantha was interviewed on a teleconference a few weeks ago called Healing the Witch Wound. And so my mother was listening to this and got onto me. She said, oh, I was just listening to this woman called Amantha. Oh my goodness, she was incredible. I said, we're publishing her book, right? She's like, oh my goodness. You have this effect, Amantha. And so I am just delighted that not only is your book going out to all these people that you've already had that effect on, but that this effect will carry on to people who haven't met you in real life, get to come across your work. So we are delighted to have taken part in helping to birth that out into the world. And here with my husband Patrick, and the two of us were thank you to everybody who's pre-ordered it, because your order comes through a very little company. It goes through our hands, and checklists and more checklists, and labels, and we do it by hand. There's 3 of us here in our team, and so the amount of names that are coming up on this Zoom call, it's just wonderful to see you all here, because we know your names, we've seen your names, we did a little happy dance when all of your orders came through. So just thank you for supporting us as well through ordering direct from us, because it really means a lot to us as a publisher to have that direct support of everybody. And so thank you, Amantha, thank you, Orla, and to all of you who have pre-ordered via us.
Thank you, Lucy. And I know that you did question in the beginning, whether this book would take off or not. And I'm so delighted, not just for myself and Orla, of course, but for you too, that you can see that it has come around. The spiral continues to move and grow, which is wonderful. So that's lovely. So thank you. I too would like to read a piece from the book. It's not a long piece. And I was sitting with the book a few days ago, holding the book, and I just asked, what part should I read out? And then I just opened the book, and I opened it on standing in the place of Bridget. Now, Bridget is one of my most beloved. I suppose they're all beloved to me, the deities. But Bridget is the place of beginning. She's our ancient earth goddess in Ireland. Homage to Bridget goes back thousands of years. Her presence was so strong that they gave the name to the woman who became one of the first nuns in Ireland to take the tradition from the pagan tradition into the Christian tradition. And Bridget is there with us still, Mary of the Goyles. She's always been loved by the Irish. And this is the eve of Bridget. I have a statue here, I don't know if you can see it there, for Bridget, so that she is beside us here for the launch. Bridget is the triple goddess. She's the keeper of the fire, the hearth, the patroness of the arts, the crafts, which is also the traditional crafts, not just the craft of leather making and jewelry, metals, etc. and also the midwife and the healer. And so she holds us there too. And so I'm going to read this part to you, and it's called Standing in the Place of Bridget, which is where we are now. Bridget holds this space, the place of birth and beginnings. This is the time when the seed is put into the ground and begins to grow. It is the place of seeding things. Standing in this place, it tells us what we have been through, a time of darkness and through the void. Empowered by this experience, we come to the place of beginning again. It asks us what seeds we want to sow. What do we want to grow into our future? This is the time to look at all that lies within the seed and all that can grow from it. From the acorn, great oaks can grow. From the seed of our ideas, amazing things can flourish. We can call upon Bridget to help us with that. This is the place of beginning, of birth, of new things coming into life. We need to be open to that. Bridget midwives things into being. She is the one we call upon when we want to give birth, both physical birth and the creations of the mind. She is the patroness of the arts. When we stand in the place of Bridget, we ask for new things to come into our lives, new opportunities, new awarenesses. We are called to allow ourselves to move and change and to wear many hats. How do we wear those hats? How do we dance our dance? As the wheel turns, we move from the place of birth with Bridget towards the place of Boan, the east. And so now in this place of Bridget, it is even more important to us. A time of beginning, a time of new birth. Because we have been through a huge transitional change in all of our lives. We've been through a time where for many people it's been very stressful, very difficult. And for most of us, it's also been a time of sitting within. That darkness that many maybe try to fight, run away from, came into being in the last 8, 9, 10 months. And coming now to the time of Bridget, it's a time of promise. It's a time of what can be. And before we move into that this evening, I would ask you just to be aware. What is it that you can be grateful for from last year? What is it that you can look back on and hold gratitude for? And also, having gone through the year, what is it that you choose to let go of now? That perhaps you've been holding on to, that doesn't serve you anymore, doesn't work in your life anymore. This is the evening for that, to light a fire, to sit by the fire, to dream into the flames what it is that you are looking to seed, to have gratitude for what was and to let go of what no longer serves. To put your shawl or cloak or even a piece of cloth out tonight to gather the dew of Bridget. My granny always wore a black cloak. I was about 17 before my mother got her out of wearing the black. And that cloak would always go out on the eve of Bridget. And she would use that through the year for healing, wrapping it around babies, around elders as they passed. It held the dew of Bridget. And so you too can do that. You can put out your shawl or a piece of cloth and gather the dew, the mist that comes down at these times, the white mist. It's Bridget calling us, letting us know that we are moving through the mist. We are in that place. We are on the threshold. And what is it we want to carry into our tomorrows? for we have more time and space now to feel into that. For many, we're no longer running, but we can sit and we can be. So I thank you all for being with us this evening. And this is an evening of celebration. And we're all celebrating in our own place and in our own way. So I have a bottle here and Orla has a bottle. Go on, Orla. So we're going to open our bottle, hopefully. And we're going to celebrate. And at some future time and date, we will celebrate together. You ready, Orla? Okay. Well, it might take us a few minutes to do this. So I think we're going to have to... Oh, no, mine's coming.
Whoop!
Well,
Slán to everyone. Here's to
Slán.
the Way of the Seabhean. May it find its way into many hands and many hearts.
and thank you all for joining us. Thank you all for participating in this birth and rebirth. May the Sebhean go forth. Blessed be. Many blessings, many blessings. Thank you all.